Hello and welcome to this new episode of the Parenting Truth and Dare podcast. I'm your host Ritika Subhash, and today I have a very special guest with me, and I have the honor of introducing our speaker. We are joined by Gavin McCormack today. He's a globally recognized educator and innovator. As the co-founder of upschool.co, Gavin empowers students with real-world entrepreneurship skills. With over 2 decades of Montessori teaching experience across multiple countries, he's developed a keen insight into innovative educational practices. Gavin serves as the Montessori Australia Ambassador and has shared his vision for transformative education as a TEDx speaker. His impact extends beyond the classroom. He's built 9 schools and several libraries in Nepal and runs 3 teacher training centers there as well. He's a best-selling author of children's books and a guide on Montessori education for parents. And Gavin has consistently been recognized as one of the top 10 most influential global educators from the years of 2019 to 22. In fact, in 2018, he was named the Australian of the Year. Okay, I'm really with a celebrity, as you can see. Gavin's work exemplifies how education can be a powerful force for positive change in the world. So please join me in welcoming Gavin, and a big, big warm welcome to you.
Thank you for that introduction. It's very embarrassing. I just want to clarify, I wasn't Australian of the Year. I was only nominated for Australian of the Year. So just to clarify that with your users, with your readers.
Well, the nomination also qualifies you as quite a celebrity there.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate that.
So I'd love for you to start with your journey and what led you to become a Montessori teacher and eventually a principal and founder of Upschool. So can you take us through that, inspirational journey of yours?
Well, okay, let's see where we go. It's a long story, but we'll paraphrase it for your listeners. So I grew up in England. I was a teacher. As soon as I left university, I was a teacher at 20 years old. And I enjoyed it from the very beginning. I really liked working with children. Obviously, it's very fun. You get to build things and play and have fun and, a lot of laughter and a lot of tears sometimes, of course. But I really enjoyed it because it was about making a difference in the world. You could see with every little child who you taught, they would graduate to become this beautiful human, and you might bump into them on the street in 25 years and your hope would be they'd be a nice person. That's what you're aiming for. Can I get a nice person out there in the world? And if you've got 30 children in your class, well, that's 30 lives you can impact, and they will impact other people's lives. And so the exponential growth of your work is tremendous. So from the beginning, it was a great job. I loved it. And then I was working in an Islamic school in Australia and was working with a lot of refugees. And they'd had a lot of trauma, these children. They've been through terrible, terrible things, which I won't ruin your podcast by explaining. I'm sure we can imagine what they went through. And I was supposed to be teaching them things like fractions and, personifications. And I thought, no, these poor children, that is the last thing they want to learn. They've been through so much trauma. How can I get them to engage with this learning and make it more meaningful? So I gave I made some spaces in the weekly timetable, some gaps. I call them the educational void, but it doesn't really matter what you call them. And I said to the children, look, it'd be really great if any of you wanted to teach us about your culture or your background or tell your story, then you can choose a slot in the curriculum and I'll help you and we'll make a presentation and you can teach us. And they're only in grade 5, these kids, so only 10 years old. But the first 2 weeks, nobody really took up my offer. There was nobody coming forward. So I thought, it's not working. I better get things going. So I decided that I was going to tell my story in one of the lessons. So I chose one of the lessons and I said, look, during this next hour, we're not going to talk about maths or English or science. I'm going to tell you about me, actually, a little bit. And so I told them a little bit about my life story. Now, my life is nothing compared to the lives that they'd had. Mine, they'd had a really hard beginning. I'd had a hard beginning, but nowhere near as hard. But they didn't know really who I was. I was just their teacher. So I started to tell them about my beginning, about how my father had left before I was born. It was only me and my mum. I lived with my grandfather when I was a kid, and I was bullied in school. And they started to realize that I was a human as well, just like them, that I wasn't, this perfect, teacher who knew everything at the front, that I was also vulnerable, and I was also anxious and scared, and all these things that they felt. And it worked, because then a little boy said, I'd like to teach a lesson next week. And I said, oh my God, amazing. And he was from Afghanistan, and he'd been through the Afghan war, and he came in next week with his abaya on, and he had some food, and he told us about his journey. And it was a very harrowing story, in actual fact. But it started a catalyst in the class. So everybody started to choose slots. And before long, everybody had a chance to share their story. And we all realized that we were the same, that we all had trauma, we all had issues, we all had problems, we'd all been through something. We're all vulnerable. And we became really close as a class. It was amazing. Like, we became equal, let's say. And at that point, the government came into my school to do an inspection, a random inspection. And the lady who came in just happened to come in on the exact moment when the child was teaching the class, and I was sitting in the child's seat being a student. It's a very bizarre thing to see when you walk in. And I was feeling really nervous because, the government was here. And at the end of the lesson, she said, can I talk to you outside in the playground? I thought, oh God, I'm in big trouble now. Like, this is terrible. And she said, I didn't realize there was any Montessori teachers working here. And I said, I don't know, what's a Montessori teacher? I have no idea what you're talking about. And she said, no, you're a Montessori teacher, right? And I said, no. She goes, well, what were you doing in the class? And I explained to her. And she said, look, you really have to go to a Montessori school and see what happens there. I think you might already be a Montessori teacher without realizing it. So off I went on this investigation of Montessori. And then I realized that in my quest to try to give the children agency and some voice and some freedom, I was halfway to become a Montessori teacher, philosophically in my mind. And then I went on to be a Montessori teacher, become a Montessori school principal, and now I'm the Montessori Ambassador for Australia, which is fantastic. And I talk about Montessori all over the world. And it's not so much Montessori as in the materials, but the philosophy, the thinking behind what is this thing we call education? What does it actually mean? Yeah. And here I am, and I'm very lucky to have those things happen to me and nudge me in the right direction to have found my way. Because before that, I was struggling to find, what this thing is we call education. Actually, I'm writing a book right now for Simon & Schuster, a global book for one of the biggest publishing houses on the planet about this exact topic. So very poignant that we're discussing it today. So thank you for asking me that question.
Absolutely. I think there's so many things that were very close to my heart. The things that you spoke, especially when children open up, when you model the same behavior with them. And I noticed them when I started running storytelling sessions way back in 2017 it was. I'm not a teacher or a storyteller by my education. I'm an engineer by my education. I've worked in the corporate world for the longest time. And then I suddenly decided to shift gears into education. And with my own son, I felt like stories and books were sort of vanishing from the scene with devices and such ease of access to cartoons and all of that. So I saw myself lugging him from one place to the other to take him to these activity classes. And I thought, this is just pointless. Let me just learn what the art of storytelling is, and maybe I can do something in my own neighborhood, in my own area. That's when I saw that children were, through those stories and through me sort of sharing things, sharing my own vulnerability, sometimes showing up in a make-believe costume or a mustache or whatever, it was just helping them open up, right? And they were sharing things that they openly said that I'm not able to share with my parents. And I think this is where, when you model that kind of vulnerability, you also get that back. And I think you were discovered by somebody, but you already had those innate qualities of bringing that hidden thoughts and humanness out of the person. From the Montessori point of view, I honestly think it's more of a commonsensical approach than anything else. I don't know what you think about this, because like you said, you never knew you were a Montessorian, but you were using the same techniques. So how do you think parents can incorporate these thought processes in their home while raising children?
I've just been talking about this. I've just toured around the whole of China for a month talking about this, and it's been amazing to see, people's reactions. I think the first thing to say is we we underestimate the capabilities of our children dramatically. All of us, unfortunately, teachers, parents, the whole of society. We put them down as children. We need to hold their hand. They need to put their hand up when they want to go to the toilet. We need to choose their seat in the classroom. All these ridiculous boundaries we put in the way of our children. Mozart wrote the most famous piece of music ever played when he was 8, ever. There's no music being played more than that, and he wrote it when he was 8. Hundreds of instruments in that composition. And yeah, he was a child prodigy and a genius, but still in classrooms today, we say to children, I'm going to choose your seat. I'm going to choose where you sit. And if you need to go to the toilet, you need to put your hand up. I'll tell you when your bladder's full. Like, when I say it out loud, it's just ridiculous, right? Like, our children have been evolving for 100 million years. Why should we tell them when they go to the toilet? It's much better for us to say to our children at home, at school, wherever the situation may be, I trust you to do these things. Here are the boundaries. Here are some of the rules and the guidelines in the classroom, but I totally trust you. You can do these things. You don't need to ask me. In fact, don't bother me. I'm busy. I'm working with a child over here. I'm making dinner, whatever it's going to be. If you want to do it and you think it's within the guidelines, then go for it. You don't need to come to me. And if you make a mistake, if you do something wrong, that's totally fine, because making mistakes is part of being human. I also make mistakes. Let me tell you about some of the mistakes I've made, And when I do make a mistake in front of you, when I do something wrong, I'm going to acknowledge it. I'm going to admit it. I'm going to say sorry. I'm going to promise you that I'm going to try not to do that again, because I want to promote and I want to model to the children that, yes, everyone has rules and everyone has guidelines and boundaries. They're different for different people, depending on your demographic, your age, your background, whatever it's going to be. And within those boundaries, everything is yes. So you don't need to ask anyone. Then there's a line. When you're on the line, that's when we need to have a discussion. If you cross the line, well, there's always going to be consequences. For me as an adult, if I go too fast down the motorway and a camera flashes, then I will get a ticket and I will have to pay $500. So I've gone over the line. If I'm on the speed limit, then maybe I'm making a risk. That's a risk. Maybe I shouldn't be. Maybe I should be under the limit. And the same goes for you in the classroom. When you go to the bathroom, to the toilet, you don't have to ask me, because it's well within the rules. But if you're in there talking for more than 10 minutes with your friends, then we're going to have a conversation about what you did, and there's going to be consequences to that. So, the reality is that Montessori, there's a lot of things that people think Montessori is. There's materials, there's the pink tower, there's the blah, blah, blah. But actually, Montessori, the philosophy of Montessori, whether it's in the home, in the classroom, in the community, it's about making learning emulate what society expects when you get there. So your classroom should really look like and function as if it was a community. So there's sharing, there's conversation, there's debate, there's argument, there's mistakes, there's movement, there's choice, there's freedom, there's rules, there's consequences. That's what it's like out there outside my house. So that's what my classroom should be like. Society is not sitting in rows where everything is dictated to me. And if I don't follow your rules, I will be punished severely. But that's not society. Society doesn't work that way unless you're living in North Korea, right? Everywhere else, it's not like that. And so our classrooms and our educational philosophy and our parenting should really be about that. And it's about time that we trusted our children and we gave them a chance and stopped patronizing them by trying to pretend that they need us for everything, because they don't.
Yeah.
I know I'm answering your question in a long way, but there's a really good way to summarize this, and that is, if you say to a child, you need to pack your bag for tomorrow. If a parent says to little Tommy, who's 7 years old, by the way, you've got to pack your bag for tomorrow for school. And Tommy packs his bag. And in packing his bag, he forgets his hat, right? Now, that means that at playtime, he can't play out, because if you don't have a hat, you're not allowed to play, right? Now, if Tommy packs his bag and playtime, he goes for his hat and his hat is missing and he packed it, you won't see a tantrum. You'll see sadness, you'll see regret, you'll see remorse, because he's upset with himself. He knows that he should have packed that hat. And the result, the consequence, is that he can't play. Now, he will not forget that hat again, I'll tell you. He will not. Let's say that mum packs the bag. Tommy, I'm going to pack your bag for tomorrow. What do you need? I don't know, mum. You know, you pack it. Mum packs it, but she forgets his hat. Now, he opens his bag to go on the playground. What do you see? You see blame now.
Yeah.
You see blame, you see lack of responsibility, lack of ownership, and now you see a tantrum. Because it's not his fault, actually, that the hat's not there. It's mum's fault.
Yeah.
And so the more responsibility we can give the children in our lives, the quicker they will learn, the less angry they will be at us, because it's not our fault, it's their fault, and the less regret they will have. And if we can do that as much as possible, incrementally, as the children get older and older and older, then, the world will be better. Our children will be more skilled when it comes to going into the real world. And as parents, we have more time. Independence means you're not needed. So you've got more time to read your book and you do whatever you need to do.
Well, which does tend to become one of the things, right? It's not easy to accept that you're not needed and you will not be needed. Like that's a gradual process. And I think it requires a lot of reflection. So where I come from, the thought process that I have is that parenting is a lot about the parent and not about the child so much. So there's a lot of reflection that needs to go on the background, right? And you need to really be able to own the fact that you are not going to be the pivot of your child's life for the rest of their life. That's not the process. That's not the intention, right? That's not why you had children. And also children are adults in the making. So these are some things that as a parent, only when you reflect, can you understand that. And on this thing about blame and natural consequences, I had a very recent experience, which I'd like to share. So my son had an assessment recently, and he's fairly good with his English and his vocabulary. But in this assessment, he got only 2 correct out of 12 questions. Right. So only 2 spellings correct. And he was the one who pulled out his notebook and showed me, look, mom, look how horribly I did on this test. And I was like, okay. And I knew he hadn't prepared, and I forgot that there was this assessment, so I forgot to help him out. All of that. But there was no blame game. And all I said was, you know what, I don't want to say anything to you about this because I know you're already feeling bad. This is not something that has happened to you before. You do fairly well. I've never pushed you to, unnecessarily be the first in the class or the second in the class. You do fairly well and you're comfortable with that, but I can see you're not comfortable with this. So I know you'll do better. It came out of me very organically, but at most instances, it does not. Like for a parent, you really have to overcome this thought that this is not a reflection of my parenting. The fact that my child did not get good marks in this is not a reflection of who I am or who this child is. It could be a factor of so many other things, and they will learn. As long as I have trust in the fact that my child wants to do good, right? Every child wants to do good. Nobody wants to go and disappoint their teachers or not do well in school or do other things. Maybe they don't have the wherewithal to do it at that moment, and you can support them. But you have to trust that they also want to do well in life. So yeah, that's something that I could really relate to right now. But I want to pivot now to the schools that you've opened in Nepal and the teacher training as well. You've talked a lot about your journey of how Montessori sort of came in your journey, and how you've really transformed that, not just kept that to the education system, but also bringing it, B2C, right? Going directly to the parents. But where did the schools in Nepal, how did that come about, and the teacher training, and what was the motivation? Because you've done some really tough things, right? I mean, you've been in hard terrains, you've been in hard weathers and all of that. So where is the motivation coming from to do all of this?
Well, that's a hard one. Motivation. How are we motivated? I'm motivated by the things that make me feel good. I'm not a money person, so I don't chase money. I have a very small apartment. I don't own many things. I don't buy brands or gold or any of those kind of fancy things. I'm motivated by spending my time wisely and using it to make the world better. To make my mum proud is one thing I love to do. I love her to be proud of me. She's very proud, which is great. I'm from a very poor family, and I want to be a good role model to my nieces and nephews and all the children that I've worked with and who know me. But how did it come about? It came about by me trying to push the envelope of purposeful education. So I was a school principal. So I had a school here in Sydney, and I had, hundreds of children and hundreds of parents.
Mm.
And, I've had over the years followers. I've got a couple of 100,000 followers online and trying to activate these people. So, I like going to the mountains. I'm a climber, so mountains are very attractive to me anyway. So I do spend a lot of time in the mountains. But when I went to Nepal, I realized that the education system there was just the worst I'd ever seen. It was just, some of the classrooms looked like prison cells in rural areas, really shocking. And you have similar ones in India, actually, in very rural areas. You have them in Bangladesh, you have them even in China in some places. But some of the worst I'd seen were in Nepal. So I visited a school there, and then I came back to my school in Australia with some photos, and I showed them to my kids. I thought, I'll just try this. Let's see what I can get them to do. And I showed them to my kids, and I said, look, check this out. This is a school. And the kids are like, what? That's a school. I said, this is a school, in Nepal. And they were shocked. And I said, look, I really want to fix it. I've promised this lady here that I'll fix it for her, but I just don't know how to fix it. And so if you've got any ideas, then I'm in my office. Just come and grab me whenever you're ready. Next day, I had 2 kids came to school, and they had a suitcase, and it was filled up with pencils and teddy bears and everything you can dream of. And they knocked on my office door and said, hello, morning. And they were like, Gavin, these are from Nepal. We started a collection of the things in our house that we don't need and we don't use, but they can all be used by the kids in the classroom in Nepal. So when you go back, you can take it. I was like, wow, that's amazing. Thank you, guys. And so I left it outside my office, and other children saw it and started to ask questions. What's that suitcase there? And these 2 kids basically modeled the behavior that the whole community was going to follow.
Wow.
So then the suitcase started to fill up. Other kids started to put things in that suitcase. Then there was 2 suitcases. Then there was 5. Then there was 20 suitcases. 20 filled with everything you can dream of. So I packed them all up. I got on a flight. I flew back to Nepal, and I fixed up this school in a weekend. I got some volunteers. And I discovered 2 things. I discovered how fun it was to do that work, right? And how fulfilling. I discovered how much it mattered to the children in my school that I brought back evidence of the result that they had created. And I discovered how much of the curriculum was inside the work that they were doing, right? They had to make evaluations. They had to do posters. They had to do persuasive text. They had to do talks. All the kids were just activated, and half the curriculum was ticked off without us opening one textbook.
What age group are we talking about?
6 years old to 12 years old.
Wow.
In fact, the 2 kids that came in on that first day were 6.
Yeah.
Right. And they started the whole thing. Anyway, so we got addicted to this work as a community, because what happened was, I was in Nepal, we opened the school, and the newspapers came, and they wrote an article, Christmas gift to the children of Nepal from, Australia. And so the children said, we want to do it again. Gavin, can you find a bigger school? So I'd go back to Nepal. I'm like, I found this one. This has got 500 kids in it. Yes. And it's terrible. They were like, right. And now we'd run marathons together, dressed as fancy dress. We'd raise $20,000. We'd have 50 suitcases. We'd have donations coming from all over the world. And so it got to a point where I was just going back to Nepal every 10 weeks, building a library, building a school, building a training center. And, we've got 9 schools now across the country. We've got 3 huge teacher training centers that have trained thousands of teachers. We've built some big libraries too, which is awesome. All of these things, just to be clear to your listeners, they're not for profit. I don't make any money. We build them and leave them for the community. So the community runs them. I train the teachers. We upschool, and myself, we've got a training course that we give away to the teachers of Nepal. They train, they go in their schools, they think differently. It's really like a magic, a perfect storm, you might call it. And now doing this work is easy. Once you've done something for over and over again, you just become a master at this work. You can just click your fingers and build a school, which you have all the connections. It sounds crazy, but you know what it's like. It's like if you bake a cake for the first time, it's very hard. You bake 20 cakes, you can bake it blindfolded after that. And so it's about
I don't think
mastering
that's a
something.
fair comparison. I think you're really underselling what you've done, because it's not just about the resources that you garnered or people came in, right? That happens with a movement. So you basically created a movement that then sort of took off on its own, right? But that initiation and the getting of the people together, those are what I think inspirational leaders do, and leading is all about that. In fact, as parents, we think about discipline quite a lot, right? Discipline is a word that is sort of baked into this whole parenting journey. But if you look at the root of the word, it is not about punishment. The first thing that when you close your eyes, you think of the word discipline, you think of some sort of, punishment or consequence and all of that. But the root actually says that discipline is all about leading and showing the way and modeling. So if you're able to create that, and I really hope there are maybe 100 more Gavins like you out there who are thinking like this, who are thinking of creating movements that are then self-sustaining in terms of how these, and I'm sure you're following up with the progress of these schools, right? As to how they're.
Oh, of course. Yeah. Just to be clear, I manage all of their teachers. They go to my training centers. I'm in touch with all the principals. I visit them regularly. You can't leave these things because, you have a responsibility to these organizations and people. So, of course, I'm in touch with them all the time. I go back to Nepal all the time.
Awesome. Lovely. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons I think a lot of people also join this movement, and we'll come to upschool a little bit later. But just sticking with this idea of what traditionally there are 2 systems, right? One is the traditional education system, where that it's a typical school. You go, you take an admission, sit in the classrooms, have the timetable, all of that. And then there is something which, at least for the lack of better word, I would say alternate ways of approaching education. So now I'm coming to the education part of it, because you're writing a book on what does education mean. So I think I want you to give us a little prelude of that book as well. So from a parent's perspective, and I had that dilemma as well, I had approached a couple of Steiner Waldorf schools here in Delhi, where I'm based, and I tried to look at that philosophy for my son. And I think philosophically, I fully understand, because to me, all of these philosophies, while they might have names of the people that started it, maybe it is Maria Montessori or Steiner Waldorf, it doesn't matter. To me, they are commonsensical, right? To me, they emulate how mammals have evolved over centuries and millennia. So to me, I associate with that, but I am also treading the line very carefully, because I don't want to be again, it's not about being an outcast, but really I worry and I wonder, will my child fit into a regular ecosystem once they've gone through this kind of an alternate education? So what is your take on that? How do you see that seamlessly going into how these children can also thrive in the corporate world, or whatever it is, whatever they choose to do?
Okay, it's an interesting question. Well, you've got a choice, haven't you? This is your choice. Parents vote with their feet. That's what they do. What you want, the education system will provide. That's just a fact. When enough parents knock on the door of a principal and ask for coding or something, they get it. That's what happens. I'm a school principal myself. That's what happens. Schools serve the parent community. If your parents start to unenroll from your school, you're doing something wrong. And if they are enrolling in your school, you're doing something right. So as parents, you need to know what it is that you actually want, right? What do you want? And you choose accordingly. You won't go to a cafe and say, I'll have a latte, please, and they give you a cappuccino. You're not going to accept it. You say, I didn't ask for this. I asked for a latte. And then say, I'm so sorry, let me give you a latte. And if they continuously give you the wrong order, you go to another coffee shop. That's just a fact. So that's very simple, but think about that in educational terms. As a parent, if you want grades, points, scores, rankings, 100%, and you want military rule in the way the school runs, then you'll go to that school. And if a lot of parents want that, then they're the schools that will exist. But if parents start to dig into this understanding of actually, what do I actually want? Not fit my child into the mold of society, right? Not that. What do I actually want for my little beautiful being that I have given birth to? What do I want for him or her? And you start with that question. Now, if the end result is I want them to have a mansion and a Ferrari and be rich, right? Then you just haven't done your reading, I'm afraid. You just haven't done your reading to know what brings contentness, fulfillment, passion, purpose, and happiness. You have no idea. Some of the richest people in the world are the loneliest and the most lost, right? So it's first of all, we have to scrap that notion of that. What makes us happy? What makes our children happy? And let's just be clear. Most parents, and you're a parent yourself, and most parents listening to this will know this. When someone says to you, what do you really want? When you think about it, what do you really, really want for little Tommy? I want him to be happy. That's the first thing.
Yeah, always.
Then you say, then I want him to be smart, and I want him to be successful, and I want him to be healthy, these things. First thing is happiness, right? Always, usually. So what does it mean to be happy? Well, let's use the OECD, right, who does the PISA rankings globally, and let's use them to help us understand what happiness means, right? So the OECD releases a report every year, and the top academic countries and the top happiest countries, right? So let's just compare the two. Top academic countries of 2024, Singapore, Taiwan, Japan, Macau. They're the top 4. Where do they look on the happiness scale? I'm sorry, they don't even rank. Finland, Sweden, Denmark, Iceland. All of those academic countries are really good at mathematics, science, history. They go to school for a lot of hours. They do a lot of homework. They have a lot of study. But those children, it's well reported, have so much anxiety because of the pressure put on them to score well. Because if you score well, you get into a good university and you get a good job, then you get good money and you can buy that Maserati and you can get that big mansion that's going to make you happy when you're 65. Oh no, I've wasted my whole life. I didn't do anything. What a shame. So you look at Finland, Denmark, Sweden, Iceland. What do they all have in common? They all have very high levels of trust in the community, and they all have a lot of freedom, right? So just think about that. I've just written this in my chapter 3 of my book just yesterday. This is why I've got it all clear in my mind. If you want your children to be happy, you give them trust and you give them freedom, right? So go back to your question. When we're choosing a school, what do we look for? Don't worry about the swimming pool. Do not worry about the website and how glossy it looks. Do not worry about the academic scores and where they show you they rank on the scale when it comes to the national tables. Don't worry about that. Go into the school and see how much movement there is in the classroom. See how much chatter there is in the corridor. See how many smiles you can spot on the playground. Go and look for those things. Go and look for parental involvement. Go look for inclusivity. Just look for those things and then choose the school for your child. Because if you really want them to be happy, you just need to go to the right cafe that gives you the coffee that you chose. And if you want happiness, choose freedom, choose choice, choose all those things. And to the second part of your question, how will they fit in? Well, when children go to schools where they're allowed to choose and make mistakes and have freedom and have choice, what do they become? They become very confident in their own ability. and they become adaptable, and they can pivot, and they can change,
Mm.
right? So they go to a new school, and you know what? It might not be the perfect school because there's no options in this community for you. You might have to go to that mainstream school because, I'm sorry, Tommy, but there's no other school to choose from. No worries, Mum. I'm adaptable. I'm confident. I can pivot. I can change. I can handle this.
Yeah.
You know, just to be clear to your listeners, Taylor Swift went to a Montessori school. The guys who invented Google went to a Montessori school.
Mm.
You know, the guy who invented Wikipedia went to a Montessori school. Jeff Bezos went to a Montessori school. What do they all have? They have confidence.
Mm.
They have the ability to think before other people. They're always one step ahead of the game. So, like, you know, it all depends what our parents want. If you want mansions, Ferraris, and money in a very competitive world where you end up getting to 65 and you've done zero with your life apart from chase, you know, people are crediting your life and giving you pay rises, then no problem, go for that. But if you want real happiness in your child, choose freedom, choose choice, choose agency, choose smiles, choose movement, all those things. It makes sense. You can't, when someone says it out loud, you can't argue with it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I said this is all commonsensical approach to me. I mean, this was one of the reasons I actually pulled my son out from one of the nursery schools, not very far from the school that I met you. I will not name the school, but the school that he got a nursery admission in, and we have a lottery system. I don't know if you're aware of
I've
this.
heard of it, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's basically a lottery system. You put the names of the kids in a big bowl, and then they shake the bowl, and then they pull out the draw of like a lucky draw. And I have been in those, I think, at least 4 or 5 times. And it was so disappointing to not hear your child's name. And I was like, oh my God, not even this one, not even that one. Just imagine, this is at a 3.5 years of age, right? And I am panicking as a parent and despite all my background, despite my awareness and education, I'm still losing my calm. So we get admission in one of the schools, which is very close to our house, very close to where I met you. And I was sort of okay with it. But the first day that I went to pick him up at the school, the teacher just came to me, didn't greet me, and she said, has your child never been to a preschool? And I said, well, he has, but what's wrong? What's the problem? She says, he doesn't know how to hold a pencil. This is day 1 of his first day in the nursery class. He's not even 4, I think. And I made up my mind at that point that he's not continuing the school. This is not where I want him to be, because this will transform him into somebody who's anxious, always thinking about, am I enough? And that will also affect me because I will want him to perform in this environment. So it's just going to be this cycle. So I made that conscious choice of pulling him out, and I had the luxury to do it because there was another school which is in the vicinity and sort of aligned with this principle and the Montessori approach, and don't focus on writing for the first 2-3 years. Simply involve them in storytelling and all of that. But like you said, not everybody has that availability or luxury. But I think, again, I come back to the fact that our parents reflecting on their own journey. If you've been successful in life, you would know that it's not that success, that material success, that brings you happiness, right? You work towards it with whatever potential you've got. If you're a climber, you seek opportunities to climb and add to the world, find your purpose within that. Or if you're an artist, you do that as well, right? So it comes down to finding purpose and meaning in life. And that's not going to come through material things, because they will get you on this hedonic treadmill that you will never be able to get out of. You'll constantly be running after one thing after the other. So yeah, I think
completely.
This is where I think when I work with parents in the Parent Academy, this has been my most rewarding experience, to really not tell them something that they're not aware of, but just have these aha moments when they think about this thing that, yes, I know this. Why was I blind to this?
Yeah.
I think that's something that's very rewarding as well.
Yeah, and it's a very common phrase that we need to remember, that what you own will end up owning you. And so, the more you gather, the more things that you gather, from this money, you end up being owned by these positions. And if we know that freedom brings happiness, then the less that you have, the more free you will be, and therefore the happier you'll become.
Absolutely. Now, since you quoted Fight Club, I want to ask you, are you a movie buff? I don't think so, but do you like watching movies?
I did. I went to the movies last night, actually. I went to watch Deadpool and Wolverine. It was fantastic. I do like going to the movies in the cinema. It's interesting because when I go there, the way that my brain operates is I forget the whole universe exists and I think I'm in the film. So when I go to the cinema, it's the only time I can detach from reality in actual fact. But I love it. Why do you ask?
Well, because I don't want this to be only an educational podcast. I want to explore the fun side of you as well. Of course, all of this is fun to me, but to all our listeners, they would love to know a little bit more about your life as you live away from this education segment as well. So yeah, I think movies are something which I and my family really, I think we're big movie buffs. We watch a lot of movies, more than we should actually watch. But I think that's the way that we connect and we bond. And since my son plays, he's a sports person, so we're very much into sports movies as well. So interesting little pivot there.
Yeah.
I would,
No, look, on that, it's very important to have a balanced life. You can't just continuously work and work and work. People always say to me, "Oh, Gavin, you work so much. How do you get all this stuff done? And your calendar must be insane." But I like to do two things at once. So, for example, in September last year, I took 10 friends and we climbed to Everest Base Camp, right? And it
wow.
was really fun. We had a lot of fun doing it. But I took a film crew with me and then recorded lessons all the way up. I thought, I'm not going to miss this opportunity to record lessons on Everest. And then I went to Antarctica and did the same. I went to the North Pole. I just went to Iceland a few weeks ago. And, if you can make your passion your profession, then you have won. You have 100% won in life. And that's what we've got to do in our schools. If we give our children freedom and choice, they will discover what they love to do in
Mm.
our classrooms and they will learn along the way. And, later on they'll say, I want to be a vet. In school, I got to care for lots of animals and I realized that it makes me feel happy. So now I'm going to do this. So, it's very important that we don't tell our children what we want them to become. We let them ask the question, who do I want to become? It's more about who rather than what.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely makes sense and totally profound. I think these questions that we ask are really the starting point, right? We're asking the wrong question. We're expecting the wrong things, and we are hoping that the pursuit of happiness leads us there. But it's really about a lot of reflection. I keep coming back to that. I would also like to hear a little bit about Upschool now, as to what you are doing with that and what is the idea to grow that with schools. Is there an opportunity for schools to look at that as a program to associate with?
Yes, of course, there's an opportunity for schools. So Upschool basically is a website with courses for children. There's hundreds of courses there. I've written them all myself, and they come with, I guess, let's go with three fundamental principles. Number one, all of the courses are delivered from really crazy places around the world. So Antarctica, North Pole, Costa Rica, even Bangalore. I went to visit the largest tree in the world in Bangalore. And the idea is that we bring the world's wonders into your classroom. So, we've had lessons down with blue whales, with polar bears, with leopard seals, you name it.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky to have done those things. And we'll continue to do that. There's more obviously coming all the time.
Mm.
All the courses are free, all of them, which is cool.
Mm.
They're all aligned with the NEP 2020. So any schools from India listening are like, if you want to achieve the NEP 2020, you just go to Upschool and everything's done. I've written the curriculum, I made all the resources, I've even recorded all the intros to every lesson.
Mm.
Everything is done, everything is free. It's unbelievable. We've got hundreds of thousands of children all around the world come every single day. And we've got all of Ryan's schools with Dr. Snell Pinto. We've worked with Dr. Sunita Gandhi over at CMS, all of her schools, Delhi Public Schools. Like all of these schools are coming to Upschool, which is fantastic. And we're doing all this work with these amazing organizations. The second thing is that all of the learning that the children do, yes, it's academic, of course, but it's all purposeful. So the children take real action with the things that they learn about. And we've seen children planting forests in Delhi and building houses in Bangalore and, rescuing animals and all this wonderful stuff, because the learning process that I like to guide children on is I ask them the fundamental question. Now that you know this new thing, what are you going to do with this new knowledge to make the world better? And that's how we're going to assess you. Yeah, well done. You know something. That's great. I'm not impressed by you knowing something. What I am impressed by is how you use that knowledge. What do you do with it? Oh, well, I'm going to do this with it. And it doesn't matter what they do, how big or small, as long as the world gets better. So if I want to make my mum smile by making her a postcard, well, it's fine. The world got better. One person smiled. Or I want to plant a forest with 25,000 trees in Delhi. That's also equally as amazing. It doesn't matter on what scale that you do the difference, just as long as the difference takes place. And the third thing is that it allows children to understand their power, really, their power and their ability to do amazing things. So, we've got all of these teachers around the world shifting their mindset and how they operate, what they think about assessment, what their expectations are. And we offer teacher training too. So I've written recently a teacher training course alongside Professor Mark Williams. He's one of the world's leading neuroscientists. And we just recently had that training accredited by CPD and Montessori Australia, University of Notre Dame, just around the corner to accredit that. That's 25 hours. That's on the platform too. Teachers can go and enroll in that. And the idea is to change the world using this platform. And I'm not joking. I'm not being over-exaggeratory here. It's really working. Like, so many schools are coming from every corner of the planet. We've got every country covered. It's just insane. In fact, to the point where the world's largest school, Beacon House in Pakistan, 315,000 kids yesterday embedded our courses into their curriculum. Yeah. It is remarkable what's happening. A lot of hard work from our team in the background has gone into putting all these things together, but yeah, it's unbelievable. So many parents out there who are looking for something a bit different, or any teachers, wanting to do something that's a bit, exciting and get their community excited about this, then just go to upschool.co and you find everything there for free, and you can enroll your entire school one click.
Oh, wow. I think it's just beyond my imagination that these things are available now. We grew up in an era where this wasn't the case, but then, of course, libraries were pretty commonplace, which I don't think are so much right now, which is where I will ask you about your book as well. But first, with Upschool, you mentioned that parents can also get on it. So it's something that they can drive on their own, because I assume that when a school takes up the Upschool subscription, you do some amount of hand-holding, some amount of integration of the teachers as to how they can, really use it in a blended fashion with what they're doing. Is that the case that you do?
Yeah, some schools take it on their own it doesn't really need any assistance. It's all self-explanatory. Everything's, and we even have training. Each of the courses have training for teachers so they can understand each week of what to do. So it's all in there embedded. But some schools, yes, I meet them on a regular basis. We meet their kids, we meet their parents, we meet the teachers, we onboard them. And I give all my time to that. So I'm fully invested. So schools need that assistance, of course, but also parents. Parents, I did a workshop on Monday evening. What day is it today? So it was last Monday I did a workshop, and 1,000 parents turned up just from India. And they all came. They wanted to get on board and get their children enrolled and whatnot. And so you see all these little things happening in homes and schools, and children writing and publishing their own books and planting forests. And I get all the feedback, and I go to bed and I lie there thinking, goodness me, like, this is insane what's happening around the world, all these magical journeys that are taking place. And because we don't dictate what the kids do, we just inspire them to give it a go and try what they think, might seem impossible. They usually achieve their goals. These children are determined, they can achieve wonderful things. So yeah, it's amazing. Actually, we just released a course called SDG Challenges. We've got 17 challenges alongside every SDG, where children get to write to 17 of the world's most prominent leaders. And then they've got every leader's email address: Zuckerberg, Bezos, Musk. Kids can write to them, and their only objective is to get a response. So they do some work in their community, align with the SDG. They spin this magical wheel, and it lands on one of the world's leaders. Modi's in there, and then they write a letter to that leader, and they email it or they post it. And their objective is just to get a response. So We
Okay,
found that,
I'm very curious. Can I participate? Can I do this as a grown person and I don't have to be a child for this?
I mean, you can. Of course you can. We've got some 80-year-old ladies doing our courses, which is quite fun. But for
Good.
kids, it's really fun because they're like, I just emailed Elon Musk this afternoon. And, we're doing it with Ryan Schools at the moment, and Dr. Snell Pinto enrolled 50,000 kids onto this course alone, right? And you know what happens is the children feel disheartened. So, like, you get all these kids and they all write to Mark Zuckerberg about SDG number 3. Dear Mark Zuckerberg, in our classroom, we have been doing these things. What are you going to do about it? And there's no response. And they're all feeling a bit disheartened. And then one kid gets one response. And he's in the assembly saying, I got a response from Mark Zuckerberg. And then you see everyone's level of optimism in the school. Every kid's like, I'm writing again. I am going again. And, that's the idea, to drive this determination through engaged, purposeful learning. I think
I
it's
have a
magic.
feeling you're going to bring down the productivity of the Bezos and Zuckerbergs of the world because they'll only be answering to all your students and their mails, well, on the lighter note. But
That
definitely,
is the hope, right? That we give this voice to a generation that they can make a difference in the world. So, yeah, it's really good. I'm really loving it. And we have a huge enrollment in India, just a huge enrollment. Hundreds of thousands of kids out of India coming. So, long live that, productivity in the country. Big fan of India. Big fan of the NEP 2020. I just love it. You're way ahead of the rest of the world. Like, which country on the planet mandates having the SDGs in their curriculum? Nobody, apart from India. What talk about modeling behavior. I just love it. So good on the country and good on everyone who's driving. I think it's fantastic.
Well, I think you've touched a very controversial point because there will be a lot of speakers. There have been some speakers in the past on my podcast, and there'll be some in the future that will be not so enthusiastic about the NEP. But I think the only reason why that is the case is because they don't see it as something that's actionable or having been actioned in the last 2 or 3 years. But what you're telling me is about an ecosystem that can be created, that need not be very expensive for schools, and it can be implementable, and it can definitely move the schools towards implementation of the NEP.
Yeah, when you say not expensive, zero is not expensive. That's how much it costs, zero. So it's absolutely free. And actually a good point to make because, I go to a lot of educational forums, conferences, talks, all this kind of stuff. I could see that the SDGs were on their way. I knew they were coming in 2017. I was like, these things are coming in the curriculum soon. So when we made Up School from the very beginning, we aligned every single course with the SDGs. And it was a good move to make because now the whole world is looking for assistance in integrating SDGs in their curriculum. And we've got all these hundreds of courses and resources. And so it's sitting there waiting to happen. Now, I've got to say something to you, Ritika, that in a minute, I have to leave. I have another meeting in about 3 minutes' time. So I'm sorry to say that to your listeners, but we've been talking for a long time and I apologize for talking so much.
No, I think this is very generous of you to give all of us more time than we actually asked for. Just before you leave, where can people find your work? And this is the Parenting Truth and Dare podcast. So we unpack the truth about education and conscious parenting today. What dare would you like to give? So any last final dare to the parents?
A dare?
Yes. It's a very action-oriented program. So I don't want people to simply absorb this information and not do anything about it. So you have to give them a dare. And you have to share where people can connect with you. And hopefully we can do this again sometime on a different.
100%. And, I've already met you in person, which was lovely. You're an amazing woman. I remember seeing you in Delhi Public School talking. I was like, wow. Where can you find me? Everywhere. It's very easy to find me. I'm very accessible. Like you did, you just go on the internet and it's very easy to find me. I don't hide who I am. Or you can go to upschool.co. It's easy to find me there, no problem. I have written a book, actually. It's a bestseller in India at the moment on Amazon. It's called The Potential in Every Child, and it's 100 ways to implement Montessori methodology in your home as a parent. Very simple, very easy, not too heavy. I've made it so that you can just open the book and say, right, I'm going to do this today. And my dare is this, and I just talked about this in China to thousands of parents. My dare is this, that, well, I've got 2 dares. For your parents. Number one, if you are going to enforce rules in your house about what your children should do, you better do it yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what your rule is. If you say no shouting, then you better not shout. If you say no phones at the dinner table, no phones at the dinner table for you. It's 100%, I'm sorry, Ritika, because your children will be who you are. And you've heard that phrase, it's not fair. If you've ever heard that phrase, it's not fair, you know what it is? It means it's actually not fair. Children go, well, this isn't fair. You said do this, but you're not doing it.
Mm-hmm.
So model the behavior you wish to view in the child, or don't tell them what to do at all. Right? If you're going to put a rule in place, then you better be following it yourself, because there's no point otherwise. Number 2, say I love you to your child every day. Get on the floor, on your knees, look them in the eye, hold their hand and say, you know what? I love you so much. It doesn't matter how many mistakes you make. Unconditionally, I love you, and you need to know that. And say it every day, because we don't do that enough. And it's so important. And those 3 words, delivered in the right way, with meaning and purpose and intention, they are so impactful to our children. And they, so for all your listeners, you know, those 2 things, although there are many we could talk about, maybe in the next podcast we'll do that. But yeah, I'll have to leave you with that. But thank you for having me. I really appreciate being here.
Thank you. And thank you for your time. I don't want to keep you, but you are a force to reckon with. And I think there's so much more that you'll be doing, so much of impact. And I'm sure you have a very good night's sleep knowing that you are impacting this world in such a positive way. Thank you so much, and really appreciate you being here. Take care.
My pleasure. And look, those words straight back at you. You're also a force to be reckoned with. You're actually one of my inspirations. I don't follow many people on LinkedIn, but I follow you.
Thank you so much. We're going to do this again.
We will indeed. All right, then. Thank you, and have a great day.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.